This has been a crazy season for quarterbacks in the NFL. Some longtime leaders of the pack are falling off, and some others have saved their career with their performances so far this season. Let's dive in to see why things are happening the way they are. Like and subscribe, and let's get into it. First off, we have the GOAT, Tom Brady. Much has been discussed about his life away from football, from him taking a ton of time off before the season started to his most recent publicized divorce from Giselle. There's no way that the man's real life isn't affecting his play on the field in at least some capacity. The other elephant in the room is that Tom is 45 years old. He takes supreme care of his body, and it's been well documented, but nobody can outrun Father Time. Tom has said that he doesn't see himself retiring anytime soon, and I tend to believe him, especially after he turned down the ultimatum from Giselle. So he's clearly feeling okay, and if you watch him on the field, he's not showing any dramatic drop-off in arm strength or mobility, which was already fairly limited to begin with. So let's get into the football of it all. For Brady's career to this point, his averages per 17 games played are as follows: 64.2% completion percentage, 4,532 yards, 33 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. If you take his stats so far in the year and apply them to 17 games, his numbers for this season would be 65.9%, 4,800 yards, 19 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. The completion percentage and yardage are up for his career, but his touchdowns are way down, especially compared to his 40 and 43 touchdowns since joining Tampa. I think there are two main factors in the decline: his receivers and red zone efficiency. The weapons at Brady's disposal went from Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, and Gronk to an injured Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Russell Gage, and Cade Otton. Julio Jones has barely played, and every wide receiver on this list has missed at least one game. The glaring difference, though, is in the red zone. This year, they are averaging exactly 3 red zone trips per game. In 2021 and 2020, they averaged exactly 4 trips per game. One fewer trip per game can make a difference, but if percentages stayed the same, then they'd still be having decent success. In 2020, they scored a touchdown 64% of their trips, good for 11th in the league. In 2021, they went up to nearly 66%, which put them in second in the league. In 2022, they have plummeted to 45%, putting them at 29th in the entire NFL. Taking away Gronk, to me, accounts for a lot of that, because if he wasn't catching the touchdown, then he was distracting the defense to get someone else open for the catch. I'm holding out hope that he comes out of retirement to make a playoff push, but I don't know if it's going to happen. The other quarterback that I see truly falling off this year is another surefire first-ballot Hall of Famer in Aaron Rodgers. So Rodgers' story is similar, but with more twists and turns, as he took his time deciding if he was going to play football at all, and then if he was going to stay with the Packers, and also had the option to go host a game show. Rodgers and his fiancée ended their relationship, and he apparently took a trip. So now that we're back to football, let's do the same exercise with him as we did with Brady. Since he became a full-time starter back in 2008, his averages look like this per 17 games: 65% completion percentage, 4,500 yards, and 37 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. Also, because it is part of the game, he's averaged 254 yards rushing per 17 games. Looking at his numbers this season applied to 17 games, it would look like this: 66%, 3,800 yards, with 27 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. He would also just have 42 yards rushing. The numbers for Rodgers are way down in touchdowns, yards, and rushing. In yards per play and run-pass ratio, they're very similar to last year. They're actually improved in red zone efficiency, and similar to Tampa Bay, they are down 1 red zone trip per game. The story has to come down to the receivers, primarily Rodgers losing his number 1 guy in Davante Adams. Per game last year, Davante averaged 97.1 yards and 0.69 touchdowns with 12.6 yards per reception. That would account for 43% of Rodgers' yards and 42% of his touchdowns this season. To me, that is the sole reason for his insane drop. The Packers didn't do enough to replace that talent, and what talent they did bring in has been injured. The starting wide receivers for the Packers are currently Sammy Watkins, Romeo Doubs, and Amari Rodgers. It's hard to dissect defenses when receivers can't get separation or catch tough passes. I believe Rodgers when he said this will likely be his last season. Watching him every game get disappointed with his guys is just hard to watch. Let's move on to more positive stories. First, Trevor Lawrence. This guy could not have had a better turnaround from last season. He had a first-year, first-time NFL head coach come in from the college ranks and managed to get the entire locker room to hate him. Got fired halfway through his first season, and then they scrap everything. Not to mention his first-round running back, who was his college teammate, was placed on IR to begin the season. Then the sun came up in Jacksonville, and they hired a Super Bowl champion head coach, got Etienne back, and then signed every talented free agent willing to come to Florida. It's amazing what competent play calling, talent at the skill positions, and a revamped offensive line will do for you. Last season, ignoring the 3-14 record, Lawrence started all 17 games, completing 59% of his passes for 3,600 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 17 interceptions. Not a great ratio, and a dismal start to the career for the no-brainer number 1 overall pick. He did rush for 334 yards and 2 touchdowns as well. So what did getting back Etienne, adding Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, and Zay Jones do for him? Well, if you take his numbers so far and apply it to 17 games, he'll complete 62% of his passes for 3,900 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. He will also rush for 210 yards and 6 touchdowns. His efficiency has greatly increased in touchdown percentage, yards per attempt, and yards per completion as well. Taking care of the ball significantly better is probably the most promising sign, as some guys get labeled as turnover machines early in their career if they can't correct it. I think Lawrence will be in Jacksonville for a long time, and we'll likely see him get out of the top 10 in the draft pretty soon. The last guy I want to talk about who has acknowledged he was on the hot seat and needed to step up, then did, is Tua. It's no secret that he struggled the last 2 seasons with football and with injuries. Unfortunately, this season has been no different in the injury category, as he suffered a back injury and then a concussion. Poorly handled concussion protocols aside, Tua has taken control of this team and has them absolutely cooking. Mike McDaniel was the perfect coach to come in and apply his offensive structure from San Fran. The stat changes for Tua are insane. Per 17 games, his first 2 seasons, he averaged 66% completions for 3,300 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. This season, he has completed 69% of his passes and would go for 4,700 yards, 34 touchdowns, and only 8 interceptions if he was able to play all 17 games. I know that's already out the window, but can we appreciate the insane growth? Tyreek Hill's addition has been nothing short of a miracle for Tua, and it's helped Jalen Waddle avoid double teams and thus become another dominant target for this offense. Both players are in the top 5 in receiving yards in the entire league, and both are top 3 in the catches over 20 yards. Tua isn't going anywhere, and the Dolphins can use the draft capital that they didn't forfeit due to trying to lure Tom Brady to Miami on positions other than quarterback. Thanks for watching. Let me know who else has fallen off and who has made that jump. Like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all next time.